So I am Amy, as it says from my name, and alongside Emma, Dr. Emma, we've recently written a book called Surviving Solo Motherhood. What we want from it is to be sort of a guideline to help you get through all of the emotional issues that come about when you become a single parent. So that's a little intro to me and Emma.
Hi everyone, I'm Emma. So I'm a clinical psychologist, and as Amy's saying, I wrote the book, so Surviving Solo Motherhood with AB. I'm also a single parent, and obviously a clinical psychologist. I work a lot with people in situations where they're navigating whether to come out of relationships or navigating single parenting. And I mean, I have two hats on in my work. I work in mental health and neuropsychology, and that can mean for some people in the neuropsychology world working with people perhaps where they're effectively a solo parent, perhaps where their other half is in a situation where they're very injured or something has happened. So working with people in all sorts of circumstances. And so, as Amy said, we really wanted the book that we wrote to really help explore all the experiences of solo parenting and how to help find ways through that, because we know it's a really challenging journey. And then, I mean, Amy, did you want to say a little bit about yourself as well?
Yeah, so I became a single mum when my son was about 4, so it was around Christmas time. I became a single mum suddenly, and just didn't really know what to do with myself. I struggled with depression, anxiety, and I was just a bit of a mess, really. Since then I've kind of come out of it. I feel like I'm doing all right now. I'm okay. I'm getting through this. And for the book, I've interviewed quite a few different single mums from different backgrounds to show just all the different emotions that come up being a single mum. So today we're going to look at our top 10 tips for getting through solo parenting and bossing it. Emma, you're going to start for us, aren't you?
Yes. So we've come up with our kind of favorite tips, I guess, that we're going to talk you through. I would just say, in true kind of solo parenting fashion, my children are upstairs. I'm at home, and hopefully we won't be disturbed. They're very happy I'm doing this because they get an hour of screen time extra that they weren't expecting. So we've got our 10 ideas that we wanted to talk you through, and to start with, the first one I wanted to talk about is about looking after yourself. So obviously that's just a massive topic in itself. It's we could probably talk for a whole hour on what that means. But when we're thinking about it in terms of solo parenting, and it's such a, I guess maybe it's becoming a bit of a cliche phrase, you must look after yourself. But it really is even more crucial when you become a solo parent. And that can mean anything from, thinking right back to the basics about, are you eating? Are you taking your time to have something to eat, 3 meals a day if you can? Are you taking time to make sure you have a shower? Are you finding some time to be able to exercise or move your body or get outside in some way or do some yoga? It's, do you have some downtime? Do you give yourself some time off? Do you give yourself permission to rest? It's all those things. It's, that self-care that, again, it's such a buzzword, but actually is so, so crucial. And I know Amy and I would both say our personal experiences, I know for me and the people I work with professionally as well, it's so crucial. And it's often the main things that often completely go out the window when you become a solo parent and through the solo parenting journey, when you are obviously just overwhelmed with all the things you're having to do, or the roles you're suddenly having to take on, with having to maybe work more, with having to obviously be there fully for your kids and the house and everything that you need to do, that often having that time that's just for you, or having that time where you're actually looking after yourself, tends to be right down at the bottom of the list. But actually we wanted to put it right at the top of this list because it's so important. And if you're not looking after yourself, then it's really hard to be that mum that your dad that you want to be that parent you want to be. It's really difficult to be able to provide that, whether it's emotional support or physical support or financially be able to work in the way that you want if you're not looking after yourself. So that would be the first thing that I'd be saying. So if anybody listening to this is thinking, actually I can barely find time to cook myself a meal or to grab that shower in the morning or whatever it is, it's really thinking about how do we start to find you that time, and often that giving yourself permission is a really, really big part of that. So I often say giving yourself permission to have the evening off, giving yourself permission to take that 10 minutes where the children are on their screens, giving yourself permission to go to work if that's what you need to, and without making yourself feel guilty. It's all of that, and that's so important. I don't know if you'd add to that, Amy.
Just like my personal experience with like trying to look after myself. So when I was going through depression, I really struggled with just like little things that sound like they should be the norm, like just getting showered in the morning, putting on like a fresh top. Like there were times that I'd like I wouldn't even get showered. I'd get out of bed, I'd put a hoodie on and just be wearing the pajama top that I'd worn to sleep in, and then gone to drop mine off at school, and then come back to work. And it just like sets me up for a bad day, basically. Sets me up for like a day of just like moping around and not feeling good. So like the one thing I make sure I do is always shower, which sounds like really basic, but I have to shower and put on a fresh top, even if it's a fresh pajama top. It needs to be fresh.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's you mentioned pajamas, and I think even things like making sure that you do have time to get into bed and have a decent night's sleep. And again, that's really easy to go out the window when you're maybe working hard and parenting and then having to tidy the house, and again, it's that giving yourself permission. It's giving yourself permission to say, do you know what, I can leave tidying that room tonight. I'm going to go to bed and get myself a night's sleep and have some time where I can maybe just read a book or watch a bit of TV before bed, or being able to do what you need. Because again, it's that if you can get yourself that rest, then you're going to be far more effective to be able to take care of you and your children. And it is that the reality is, for all of us who, as a single parent, you've gone from perhaps being in a two-parent family or whatever your situation is, you're suddenly in the situation where you are having to take on multiple roles, and there just aren't a million hours in the day. There isn't that time. And so it is about, you need to look after you, and you need to put yourself at the top, or at least alongside your children's needs, and make sure that that's your priority.
Definitely. Like the ironing can wait. That the ironing doesn't happen in my house.
It doesn't happen. Yeah.
The kitchen is currently a mess, but oh well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So should we move on to our next tip?
Yeah, let's go for it.
So our next one is about accepting help. So it can be really difficult to accept help, especially if you don't want other people to think that you can't cope as a single mom. You're struggling. You don't want to seem vulnerable. But if people are offering help, they want to help you. You're not a burden. You need to say yes. You deserve the help. And also, if you are struggling, then don't be afraid to ask for help. If you've got anybody around you that can help, if there's like a mum on the school run that can maybe pick up your child once in a while, just to give you that extra bit of hand, because you aren't actually Superwoman, even though you might feel like you need to be. You're not. You're allowed to have help. And yeah, I ask for help all the time, and I'm not ashamed of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think again, it's that thing of knowing that you've gone into the situation where suddenly you are having to be juggling so many roles, and that it may have been, depending on the circumstances, that before you were able to do all the bits you wanted to be able to do. Maybe you could do every school run, or you could do every school trip, or you could you could do all the things that you wanted to be able to do to be with your children, or for work, whatever it is. And the reality is that with all these roles that you might now be juggling, it is really difficult to do all those things and to manage all those things. And like Amy's saying, there's absolutely no shame, and there's no failure in any way whatsoever in actually saying, do you know what, I'm going to allow a few more people to help me. And we'll talk a bit more about social connections in a moment, but that idea of building up the connections around you, whether it's the school mums or dads, or whether it's around finding, whether it's paid help in terms of support in some way, or whatever it might be, being able to have someone who can help give the kids a lift to football, or not always go to every ballet class, or whatever it might be. It's knowing that it is okay to allow other people to step in and help, and to give you that support, or people to pick up some food shop for you, or to look after the children while you go to the gym, whatever it might be. It's accepting that you can have that, and that again, all of that is tying into making you to be the best you can be, really, to have the most energy, to have the most care of yourself, so that you can function as well as possible for you and your family. So it's really important.
And yeah, like not just asking for help when it's something important, like a doctor's appointment, like you need someone to look after your child whilst you're at a doctor's appointment, but like asking for help for, if there's like a hobby that you want to do, is there someone that can look after your child for an hour a week or something, that whilst you can do that, something that you can do for yourself, because that is as important as the important things.
Yeah. And I guess touching on that, so you'd add in that thinking about accepting help might be about going to get some maybe more official help and support, and it might be about asking for help around finances, or asking for help around legal situations, or anything in that kind of realm where you might need to speak to a professional. And again, we'll talk a bit more about therapy later, but certainly asking for help in that sense of that it's okay to maybe need a bit more additional help in certain areas that you might not have had to go to before. And I mean, I'm just going to comment, as someone mentioned in the chat, about that it's really, really hard, that you feel like you have to prove you can do it on your own. And absolutely. And I think we can all feel that. It feels like that there's so many emotions, and also we know really negative emotions sometimes that come with sometimes that experience of becoming a single parent, and the stigma around it, and all of those things. And actually being able to know that you can be incredibly strong and an amazing parent, and actually part of that comes the confidence of saying, I will accept that help to have that lift to school, or I'll accept that help to have that after school care, or whatever it might be. And actually that's making you and your family, it's putting you in a really good position, because everybody is managing and supported in a better way. So
we all need help.
Yeah, you do. Okay, so we'll move on to our third tip, which is about making social connections. So just tying in with what I touched on a moment ago. And for me, again, personally and professionally, I think this is such an important one. And as a single parent, it's, I'm sure we all are familiar with how it can feel incredibly lonely. It can be incredibly difficult. It's you and your child or your children, and it doesn't matter how many friends or family you might have around you. It's a really difficult time where, particularly if you have, if you come out of a relationship, whether it's however long that relationship was prior to becoming a single parent, suddenly the loss of that, and the loss of that conversation as you come home in the evening, and that support in really small ways can feel huge. It can be really significant. And so really thinking about how to build up your social connections as a single parent can be incredibly helpful. And it, it's very much kind of a process, and it's about when you're ready to be able to do all of this. And it can be about, so I know a brilliant therapist, actually colleague and therapist of mine, who I actually went to and spoke to in the early days of my journey of being a single parent, gave me some what I felt was just fantastic advice, and it really helped me, which was about this idea of widening out your social network, and about really sitting down and drawing out, like, who are the people in your network, who are the friends or the family, who are the people that you have, and also, thinking really widely, like there might be the really close-knit ones that you would put right at the center, but also the people you might have that you might occasionally say hi to, or have a few texts with occasionally, or maybe the people you know on Facebook, who again you might never meet, but you still have some kind of connection with. and to really have this sense of actually there's all these people in my life, and also to think, are there areas where I want to build on this, and whether that's about meeting new people through something like this, through this community, whether it's through meeting people through coming up with new hobbies, which we're going to talk a bit about, whether it's about just taking that initiative and making more connections at the school gate, or reaching out to someone you thought, actually, I think I'd quite like to go for coffee with them, and really just building up ways to make connections. And sometimes that means being quite brave and taking the initiative. And again, I know personally this is something I feel like I've probably reached out a lot more than I ever have done to people, and it's been a really positive experience, but it does often mean taking the initiative, and to do that and to really build up those social connections, and to feel like you've got a big variety of people where you can find that if you need to, and that can be really, really helpful, and can help with that sense of feeling less alone. And also that, we know from, Amy, obviously you were mentioning earlier about the experience of depression, and we know that's can be really common, to feel very low or feel very sad in solo parenting. And that one of the things we know about depression is that when we make those social connections, when we see people for coffee, when we go out for a dinner, when we go for a walk with someone, when we make that time for that social connection, that actually that is one of the things that boosts our mood, that lifts our mood, and is really, really beneficial in helping us feel better in ourselves. So it's something that it's really good to work on and encourage, and it might mean really having to think differently than you did if you were in a couple. You might have to start thinking about different ways that you reach out to people, or different ways that you might see people, different social hobbies and things like that. But the payoff and the benefits are huge. So,
yeah, I found that when I first became a single parent, I was obviously quite depressed, but I was lucky to have like quite a few friends checking in on me, and the more that I made plans with them, the more I felt comfortable going out and doing more things, and eventually I felt like I didn't want to just stay in my bed all night or all day. I could actually leave the bed and have fun again. I also actually I joined Frollo about a year after me and Milo's dad broke up, and I got a message on there. So I'm quite introverted. I wouldn't normally message someone first because I'm like, just hide away. So I got a message from a girl that had moved into my village, and she had a son in the same year group as mine. So I responded to her, and we went on like a play date, and now we're like best friends. We literally like see each other all the time. She was part of my social bubble when lockdown happened, and that was all through Frollo, which is kind of crazy. So I think it just shows how important these like communities are. Yeah.
Amazing. Lovely. Should we move on to the next?
Yeah, I think we're going to run out of time if we
No, we'll keep talking quickly.
So our next one is about creating new routines and traditions. So obviously a lot's changed when you've become a single mum or a single parent. Your weekly setup might be different. So for me, my son goes to his dad's every Friday night to Saturday afternoon. So I always make sure that on Sunday that we do something together, whether it's like, something simple like playing a board game, or going to the park, or like yesterday we went to a museum, just something that it involves just me and him and no screens, because it can be very easy to just spend a lot of time on the screens. So that's what we do. To create new traditions and routines.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, and I think again it's part of that process of starting to find like who you are as a single parent, and the fact that this is a new journey, this is a new experience, and it can feel like there's lots of losses. So it can feel like there's lots that isn't happening that would have happened before in perhaps whatever setup you had previously, and so starting to think about actually, let's find these new things that we can look forward to, that we can get excited about. And children particularly, I think, love that, and really find that something, again, particularly them moving between households, to be able to know, oh, Thursday nights, that's always when I have, fajita night with dad, or Sunday night's always movie night, or whatever it might be. And that's something that, you know, whether it's about traditions around birthdays or whether it's about things that you do in the school holidays and something maybe that you always can put in place, or certain things around, like my son's just, his new thing is he likes to come up with a recipe to cook on a Sunday afternoon, and that's great, and he loves it, and he goes away and, you know, looks for something to do and researches it, and that's his new thing, and I think it's being able to really start to embrace what could this new life look like, and how could we start to make this, rather than focus on those losses, how do we focus on what new things we can bring to this, and also as a single parent, the one thing that we can find positive, I guess, or not the one thing, I'll correct that, but there are many things, but the one thing that we can say is about, it's around, you know, you get to say, you get, you know, you and your children together get to make these choices without having to necessarily consider another person, which sometimes has its benefits. So, you know, we'll take the wins where we can.
Want breakfast for dinner, you can have breakfast for dinner.
Exactly, absolutely. Okay, so yeah, we're going to keep going because in case we run out of time. So the next one's about, or we could have titled it "Keep Talking," and what we're sort of thinking about with that is obviously about the importance of talking to people about how you're doing, and that could be really informally. It can be obviously talking to your friends, it could be talking to family, it could be you know, talking to the community here. It's about finding that way to make sure that you are talking to someone, because this is tough. There's no way around it. We all know, anyone who's experienced this, however much, even if, you know, coming into the situation is absolutely the right thing, or there's lots of relief around it, or all those things, it can also be incredibly tough. And so being able to make sure that you are talking to someone in the way that you're comfortable with, about how are you doing, how are you feeling, what's the challenges you're facing, you know, what support you might need, and obviously that can be more formally, so it can be thinking about talking to a therapist, it could be you might want to seek a counsellor or a psychologist, or a family therapist or couples therapist or anything like that. It's about finding someone that you feel comfortable to talk to, and again, it's knowing that there's absolutely no shame in that, and that it's a real show of strength. And I always say that to anybody who comes to see me, it's an incredible show of strength to go and seek that help and support, and to have somebody to talk to about how you're doing. And sometimes you just need one session or two sessions, and I know that's something I've done myself. Sometimes you just need to have somewhere where you can just have a bit of space to talk and cry and share whatever it is, or get angry, whatever it is you're feeling. But sometimes it might need a lot more than that, particularly maybe if you've been through quite traumatic experiences, or if you're carrying a lot of guilt or shame, or anger, you might want a bit more help to be able to work that through. So whether it's in that more informal ways of talking to your friends, or talking to people in a more formal way through a therapist, then I'd really, really encourage that. And I think it's very easy for us to say we're fine, and a bit like was mentioned earlier, it's easy to sort of feel like you have to prove like you can do this, you can get on with it, and not show maybe what's really going on and how you're really feeling. But it's really important, and it doesn't mean that you necessarily want to feel like you share that to everybody and anyone you see, but it is about making sure there are people that you are talking to who are where you find that help and support.
Places where you can open up and just say what's going on in your head. When me and Milo's dad broke up, I always take Milo swimming on Wednesdays. He was at a swimming lesson one day, and I started talking to another mum at the swimming lesson, and it turned out that her and her ex had broken up in like a really horrible way. She was not going through a great time, and I was like, we've just had the same experience. So we ended up having like a tradition where every Wednesday boys would have their swimming lesson for half an hour, we would sit on the lounges and just chat constantly, and then we'd go for dinner afterwards, and it just helped so much, just like getting it out there and actually having someone else that's going through the same kind of experience. It just really helped, definitely.
Yeah.
So yes, keep talking.
Yeah.
Right. Our next tip is to learn new skills and hobbies. So this could be anything like something that you can do from home, like yoga, you know, on like a YouTube video or something, or you could be a bit more adventurous and, you know, if you've got the time and space to do something like paddleboarding or something like rock climbing, something, you know, a bit exciting. Or like, even if it's not like, you could just learn like stuff that you could do at home, like a bit of DIY, like when I was so a few months later, my boiler broke, and I researched exactly how I could fix my boiler. So I like watched loads of YouTube videos. I mean, I think it was probably something really simple that a lot of people can fix, but I fixed it, and I was just so proud of myself, and I just felt like I was completely bossing life because I'd managed to get the heating working again, and I didn't need to call anyone for it. It was very rewarding. Also, when this doesn't really like, I'm just going to say it anyway. Also, when I became a single mum, I had my living room painted pink because I just felt like that would really cheer me up, and it did cheer me up, as you can see. Let's do it, pink walls. I can hear my child moving around upstairs, so sorry if we get interrupted. I'll let you take over, Emma.
Amazing. I've also painted my kitchen pink. You can't tell in this light, but it's also pink. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think again, it's that it's partly that element of as you're going to this new life, this new journey, it's how do you find things that actually you can start adding in, that you can start looking forward to, that can actually be part of this new world rather than the world you were in before, and that can feel like it's a really positive thing for you to focus on. It can be a good distraction. It can be, obviously it can bring loads of really great things, and so finding, like you say, whether it's a new hobby, whether it's drawing or painting or sewing or crocheting or something, you know, knitting, something you can do at home, whether it's joining a choir or singing or dancing, or, you know, whatever it might be. Wakeboarding, that's a new one that I want to do. But it's finding those things, and like I was saying, it's also thinking about the skills. So you're knowing how to use a drill, or how to hang pictures, or how to fix your boiler, or whatever it might be. Actually, you know, one of the things we talk about in our book is about finding that sense of, you know, moving from a place of feeling quite powerless, which again, single parenting can make you feel, to a place of feeling like you have some power in your life, and being able to actually feel like you can achieve these things, feel like you know how to fix the boiler or change a tire. I'm not sure if I do that, but you know, all these things that feels like, you know, you can paint your walls pink if you want to. You can take charge of how you want things to be, and also obviously for anybody who's sharing custody and co-parenting, and so where your children are moving back and forward, and you have days or evenings or time when you have to yourself, then actually having something new that you can do in that time, something you can fill that time with, because it obviously it can be challenging and it can be tough, particularly perhaps with other people, you know, might be in families, and you have this free evening or this free time to yourself, or this free day or this free weekend. Then actually then putting in hobbies or things that you can do is an amazing way to feel like you can look forward to that time, rather than it feeling like just this time where you're on your own in some way. So that's a really good one to be thinking about. Okay, so moving on, just keeping on the time, we're doing all right. So the next one is about self-compassion. And again, this might feel like a bit of a buzzword. You might have heard people talking about being self-compassionate, and the importance of self-compassion. And you know, as a psychologist, as a therapist, it's something I talk about a lot with my clients. It's something that I'm really passionate about. If anyone thinks that they'd like to know more about it after I've spoken about it today, then there's a fantastic website called, I think it's literally selfcompassion.org, and a lady called Christine Neff, who is a really kind of pioneer of the importance of self-compassion. And it's about the idea about being really kind to yourself. But also, I think what's crucial, often people feel like self-compassion is about sort of letting yourself off the hook, and it's not that. It is just it's about being kind to yourself and also pushing yourself forward, motivating yourself, acknowledging maybe where you've made mistakes. It's all those things, but it's doing it in a really kind, supportive way. And often it's really easy to have a self-critical voice in our heads. It's really easy, again, especially as a single parent, it can be really easy to criticize ourselves about not being good enough, about not being a good enough mum or dad, not being being good enough at work or good enough at home, or it can be a constant voice in your head. And there is, I certainly know in people I work with, it can feel like sometimes actually maybe that voice is useful because it drives you forward and it makes you work harder and it makes you do more. But actually what we know and what the research tells us is that actually being self-compassionate is far more effective in helping you move forward and helping you achieve things. And the way I always think about it is a bit like, if you imagine, your child has got say a football coach, and you've got one coach who is critical and tough and is like, you've got to do better, and that wasn't good enough, and you need to try harder, and what on earth are you doing there? And there's the coach who talks like that. And I imagine most people on the sidelines being slightly horrified from talking to a child in this way. Or there's the coach that kind of says, okay, that, I could see you were working hard. We didn't quite get there that time, did we? Let's have a think about it. How are we going to help you move forward next time? How are we going to get a bit quicker next time? What are we going to do? Let's think about this together. So it's supportive and it's compassionate, and it's still expecting more and working to move forward. And thinking about that, and if you've got that voice in your head, and just keeping an eye on, is it that self-critical voice or is it a compassionate voice? Then which one is it? And I mean, I could talk about this a lot more, but there's lots of kind of neuroscience behind actually how when we are really compassionate to ourselves, we are activating a part of our nervous system which effectively helps us feel calmer, helps us feel soothed, helps us feel less stressed, whereas that self-critical voice activates the part of our nervous system which makes us feel really stressed and anxious, and puts us in this really fight or flight state effectively. So there's lots of benefits to why we want to be more self-compassionate.
Yeah, there's been so many times where I've shouted at Milo or something because he's just taken about, I've had to ask him to put his shoes on 50 times. And I've lost my rag, I've shouted at him, and then I've thought, oh God, I shouldn't have said that. I should have just calmly asked him to put his shoes on again. I'm a terrible mum, I'm the worst. But really I'm just fueling a negative narrative in my head, making myself feel worse, making myself feel more stressed out. So it's just so important to just look at it in a different way. Okay, I could have maybe not raised my voice, but it doesn't mean I'm a bad mum. It means I was very stressed out at that time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's such a good example, and absolutely that to bring more that compassion into our parenting, to ourselves and also with our children, modeling it to our children is so important, and it's so helpful. And as you say, being able to say, okay, maybe I would like to do that differently next time, and I would definitely like to learn and find ways to be able to not get cross, or to maybe find different ways of talking when I'm feeling frustrated, or all of those things. But also, we are only human, and particularly as a single parent, when you're juggling many things, you are going to get cross or irritable or lose your temper occasionally. And again, we're veering into a slightly different topic, but actually one of the most important things about that is not necessarily that moment where you might get more cross than you intend to, but actually it's that ability to be able to repair it and to be able to talk to your child and say, mummy shouldn't have got that cross, and let's talk about it, and let's and being able to talk about emotions and explain how you're feeling and do all that in a really compassionate way is incredibly helpful. I mean, that's a whole nother topic, but
the book.
Yeah. but just really important to be able to do that for yourself, and to be compassionate in that way.
Yeah. So our next tip is to focus on co-parenting rather than the issues that might the bad things about your breakup, basically. I really struggled with this at the beginning because I felt really betrayed. So whenever I saw Milo's dad, I just felt rage, pure rage. I managed to hide it mainly from Milo. Well, I hope I did. But when I something would pop into my head, and then I'd send an angry text message or something, and we'd end up just having an argument over text, which just never ends well. So to stop that, we kind of created we've got a mediator. So Milo's dad's mum, who I'm really close with, we have a group WhatsApp chat with her, so we can say anything we need to say about Milo and the co-parenting situation in that group, and she can just keep an eye to make sure neither of us are, being a bit crappy, basically. And it's really helped, because now we just discuss the co-parenting arrangements. We don't discuss any personal lives or anything. I mean, it has been a few years now, so the anger isn't so much there anymore. But yeah, it works for us now to focus on co-parenting.
Yeah, and absolutely. And it's such a tough thing. And again, even in the most amicable of separations, there can often be anger and frustration and all sorts of emotions that come up in relation to your co-parent, and I guess the important thing there, like we're saying, is that it's about being able to, wherever possible, being able to kind of take that deep breath and just keep bringing it back to the main thing that we're here to do, is to co-parent our children, and to do that in a way that hopefully helps those children get through this experience in the best possible way. And that means finding a way to put them first, finding a way to not get into constant conflict with
put the phone down.
Yeah. Yeah. And also, certainly, try not to get in situations where the children are being used in any kind of way, but so everything we can do is in that, it's trying to find ways to direct it into finding a way to co-parent in as amicable, or at least a neutral way, which I think it sounds like that's what that system you set up in is amazing, and it means at least it can be a neutral way as possible, and it works absolutely, and that's what's most important. And so it's trying to find a way to work with that. And I know that absolutely for people that's not always straightforward, and it really depends on your situation and how your co-parent is, and there's many things that can make that very tricky, and people can be in very difficult situations with this. And so we're not pretending that that's easy in any way, but if in any way you can do what you can to focus on how to co-parent your child as much as possible without having to get into what might be going on underneath, and again, that's where maybe therapy or things where you can work through your feelings about your co-parent, if there are lots of challenges there, then that can be a useful thing to do. Okay, so moving on, so we've just got 2 more to go, so I think we're doing okay time-wise, and this next one is actually one of my personal favorites, in a more light-hearted way, but connecting actually with quite a few things we've mentioned. So I mean, the title I said playlists and podcasts, and what I mean by that is, one, about the power of music, and again, this is probably quite a personal one. I find music incredibly uplifting, but also, again, we know that the research says that that's true as well, and that what can be really helpful actually is to have music that you can listen to, which might be music that you need to uplift you when you're feeling stressed, or when you're particularly finding it challenging. It might be music that really helps you channel that rage, or those frustrations, or the sadness. And I mean, there's so many amazing songs out there. You can generally find something for whatever mood you're in, and it might be that you need something to lift you up, you need something to process what you're feeling, but actually having, I mean, I have different playlists, and it depends on where I'm at and which one I listen to, but that can be really helpful and really cathartic to be able to help work through what you might be feeling with music, with song. But also, I mentioned podcasts as well, because actually, again, going back to what we were saying about it can be a lonely time, it can be a difficult time, and actually there's lots of incredible podcasts out there, and partly there's just some incredible topics of all sorts of things, whether you're wanting something funny or fictional, or whether you're wanting something the way you can learn about, like any of the things we've talked about today, whether it's listening to someone talk about self-compassion, or listening to ways to look after yourself, or whatever it might be. There's obviously some fantastic information out there, so it's great to listen to. And there's so many amazing therapists and educators out there who, I love, oh my gosh, there's so many, but I mean, Dr. Chatterjee's podcasts are really helpful for just a whole wide range of topics about how to look after yourself. He did a great podcast with Christine Neff, who I mentioned earlier, about self-compassion. There's a great podcast now about sleep. So there's lots of, but he's one among many. There's lots of great podcasts out there, but also what can be about whether you listen to a radio show or you listen to a podcast that goes out regularly, is that often you also get that sense of sort of social connection, in a way that even though you're not obviously connecting directly yourself, you're not part of it, but actually if you're listening to something regularly where you get to know the presenters and you get a sense of the kind of community they're building their podcast, that brings something for you. So say you're going out for a walk, you've got some time on your own, you go out for a walk and you can listen to a podcast, it can bring you that sense of feeling connected to something, of feeling like you're hearing these people chatting and you're part of that community. So again, in a way, it can really help lift mood and energize you and help you feel connected in a way at a time when you might be having that experience on your own. So it can be a really lovely thing to use just to lift you up, which I personally would recommend. And also, as I say, the evidence-base backs that up as well.
Yeah, when I created a breakup playlist, which had just loads of songs like empowering women singing, and so I did a lot of driving after we broke up, and I would just like put it on really loud and just belt it out. And I do not have a singing voice; it is just dreadful. So poor Milo in the back just had to deal with that. He survived it. It's fine. You all need a bit of Lizzo in your life, don't you?
Absolutely.
So our last tip is we just want you to know that you will get through this. It might not feel like it at first, but it will get easier. There will always be hard days, but soon these hard days will become less and less. And one day you will look at yourself and think, yeah, I'm doing this. I've got through this. Look at me. I'm a boss. You can do this.